Hi everyone, welcome back for another tutorial video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create signs that hang off of buildings, and I'm also going to show you how to create a box that could be turned into like a vending machine or a claw machine. So I'm going to start with the vending machine or claw machine, whatever you want to use it for. And I'm going to be creating that space right here. So I am going to be working with the corner store on the right hand side. So because this is something that's going to stick out from the building, what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to have my lines connect to the farthest point because it's creating depth. So because I'm closest to point 2, that means I'm going to be connected to the left hand side of my paper to create depth. So what I'm going to do first is decide where I want the very left hand side of this machine to be. And I'm going to make a little tick mark. And I'm also going to decide how wide I want this vending machine to be. So I make another tick mark on the right hand side. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line my ruler up with the farthest point, again, because we're adding depth to it. And anytime you add depth, you connect to the farthest point. And I am going to bring that machine out onto the sidewalk by adding in some lines to create depth. My next step is going to be to create the front of the vending machine. So what I'm going to do next is, because I've already created the depth, now again I need to create the front. So now I'm going to line up with the closest dot to close that in. So think of it kind of like creating doors and windows. Okay, so what I just did is I created essentially the bottom of the vending machine, and from here I'm going to extend everything up. So I'm going to take my ruler, line it up with my tick mark on the left hand side, and I am going to draw in the height of this machine. I'm going to add in the front corner. I like to draw my lines a lot longer than I know I'm going to need because I like having a little bit of extra space instead of too little. Now this line just happens to line up with the corner of this building, so what I'm going to actually do is erase a little bit of that building just for the sake of the tutorial. So this line right here is also the right hand side of my machine. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to create essentially a box. So I have the bottom of the box here, and now I just need to create the top. So I need to connect the back of the machine to the front of the machine, and because this is creating depth, I connect to the farthest dot. So I connect again to point number 1 to create depth. To create the front of the machine at the top, I connect to the closest point. So I connect to point 2. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the back of the machine that's essentially against the wall of the building. I'm going to connect that also to point 2. And I'm going to connect it to this line right here because that is essentially the side of my machine. So what I'm essentially doing is creating a glass box that will get turned into a machine. So I have a little bit of extra line going on, so I'm going to erase those. And I'm also going to erase some of the lines inside of the machine. So I don't need this line right here or this line right here because technically the front of my box is blocking me from seeing those. And I'm also going to get rid of this line right here because the side of my machine is blocking me from seeing that side. And sometimes if you erase your line a little bit too much, you can just go back in and draw it. So here I have the front of my machine and the side of my machine. From here, you're going to turn it into what you need it to be. So it could be that it becomes a claw machine. It could be that it becomes a vending machine. If you are going to be creating a vending machine, what you can do is you can create a bunch of little like icons on the right-hand side, kind of like when you choose your soda from the vending machine. You can also create like a drawing for what's on the front of it, letting you know what it is that you're buying. If you're creating a claw machine, what you're going to have to do is create little windows, because we're eventually going to have something that looks a little bit like this. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we are going to create windows. To do that, what you're going to decide first is how wide you want that window to be in this space. So you are going to draw in a line on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. And again, also the right-hand side and the left-hand side. Okay, so I have my lines on the right and the left for this face of my machine, and on the right and the left for this face of the machine. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to connect the top and the bottom of each window to the correct point. So the face of the machine is going to get connected to point number 2. And the side of the machine, because it's the depth side, is going to get connected to point number 1. So this creates a window for our vending machine, or for our claw machine. So what you can do from here is you can create the little buttons for it. You can create the little box where you grab your prize from. You can also draw in a little claw, creating 2 lines that go down, some little hooks for it. Sometimes they have a little wire that controls it to go up and down. You can add that if you'd like, and you can also decide on the prize that's going to be drawn inside. For this one, I drew just some little like teddy bear faces, but you can do whatever prize you want the claw machine to be for. So this is how you're going to create a vending machine or a claw machine, whatever you need to turn it into for your project. The next thing I am going to do is I'm going to show you how to create signs that hang off the front of buildings. So signs that are not flush against the building. Instead, they look something like this. Okay, again, signs that kind of hang off the building and give it a little bit more depth. So I'm going to do that sign over here on the left-hand side of my building. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to decide how wide I want that sign to be. So I'm going to create the sides of the sign, and those are just straight up and down. Again, make your lines a little bit longer than you're going to need them to be. That way you have some more space to work with. Now, after we have the width of our sign, we need to create depth for it because it sticks out from the building. So anytime you add depth to a drawing in 2-point perspective, you want to connect to the point that it's farthest from. And again, that's when you're adding depth. So I'm going to connect to point 2, and I'm going to decide how tall I want my sign to be. I'm gonna make it about there. So these lines on the top and the bottom, those are extras, so I can just go ahead and erase those. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create depth for my sign. This is where the rules kind of start to get a little bit tricky. So here is what I'm going to do first. Is I'm going to give this sign some sort of thickness. So this is the thickness that I'm talking about. And to do that, what you're going to do is on the side of the sign that sticks out towards the sidewalk, you're going to draw in the thickness of your sign. So this right here is how thick my sign is. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to connect the bottom corner of my sign to the side that I'm closest to. And I'm also going to do the same thing with the top left corner. So again, I've connected the top left and the bottom left corners to the point that it's closest to, because this right here is not the depth of my sign. This right here is the depth of my sign. Now what I'm going to do next is this very upper left-hand corner. Because I need to close off the top of my sign, this is going to give me depth. So I'm going to connect the upper left-hand corner to the point that it's farthest to point number 2, to create the top of my sign. And then I'm going to close it off. And again, any lines that are extra, you can go ahead and erase those. Sometimes these signs have some sort of like pole or chain attaching them to the building. You can always add something in like that if you want to. It's not super necessary. Sometimes they have a little flourish attached to them as well. And then this sign can be turned into whatever it is that you want it to be. So that is how you create some sort of machine, either vending machine or claw machine. And this is how you create a sign that hangs off the sign of your building.